not important. The important thing is to get the best job possible. To do that, you need to get the best degree. Why a best degree? Because if you enter the marketplace with a degree, you are likely to get more or less money than if you do not. More or less. Easy. So you stay on the title, and you go to college, and you work as hard as you can to get the best degree possible. Because when you get out, you are competing with everybody. And then you get a job. And then you work hard in that job. Why? Because you're on a tightrope. What's the tightrope? Go in and yell at your boss. Do you fall out of that job pretty quickly? I think you do, depending on what you say. So you keep your head down and you work. In fact, you work just as hard as it takes to keep the job. Just a little bit more. And you keep your head down and you do what you're told because you're after now an incremental income, yes? So you've got a job and you earn, let's say, crazy, 60 grand out of college. Wow, that's awesome. What might you expect to earn the next year? 65? Then 70? Then 75? Oh, by the way, do they give you a raise every year, yes or no? No, they don't. Oh, by the way, do they give you a raise every time you deserve it? Yes or no? Turns out, in my experience, they probably don't because it's their job to give you just enough money to keep you. No more than that, ideally not $1 more because they're trying to make profits and all the other things they're trying to make. And so eventually what you're meant to do, apparently in my family, is you get to a point where you become a manager, and then a manager of managers, and ultimately a CEO. In my family, that's the pedigree. They're a CEO family, that's where I came from. And at the very end of that, you work and you work and you work, somewhere and then you buy a house, would you agree?
Yes.
And how long does the bank give you to pay the house off?
30 years.
30 years, what's another way of saying 30 years? As long as the bank thinks you will live. They're not going to extend it past 30 years because statistically you may not be around to pay it. So they give you 30 years and you go and you work and then it's great, you're working and you either make your way up or you don't. And in the end, you buy the house and in the end, you retire. And on that day you say this sentence, you say, and now I can finally be happy. Is this a familiar story to any of you guys? Is it vaguely, yeah? Resonates Australian as well as American. I think it's kind of everywhere. The problem was this. Firstly, from my point of view, that story is exactly, diametrically backwards. Because here's the thing. Happy comes first. From happy, from passion, from the things that you love to do, in fact, comes best business, don't you agree? Because if you're happy and you're doing something you love, are you more or less likely to do it at 10 o'clock at night, on the weekends, after hours, whenever? Because you just love it and you do it regardless. Agree? And is not that the best way to be in business, whether it's a job working for someone else, or whether it's a business working for yourself? Who here has their own business? Think in that way. Who here works for somebody else? Excellent. That's all right. It's excellent. I'm really glad I'm in a room full of entrepreneurs. So here's what I actually did. Firstly, I didn't question the system. So I did what the system said. And I went to, worked hard, and I went to those, do you remember those exams I was telling you about? Well, here's what actually happened. I was so stressed out that it came out physically. And I spent around about half the exam time in the restrooms throwing up every day. I couldn't even get to the exams in a car because my stomach was too nervous to even show up. Did I fail the exams? No, thankfully. I still do alright. And then I went and I got my degree. But something happened in college. And I kind of went, hang on, maybe there's more to life than this. Maybe there is a better or a different way. But even then, I didn't actually pay attention to myself and change. So I did do a job. I did work my way up. I did become a very young CEO. I did move to Silicon Valley and do all that kind of career stuff. And my clients were the sort of clients you guys probably have or know about. So I worked for IBM, Hewlett Packard, Sony, and Acer, and Lucent, and 3Com, and the guys on Sand Hill Road in Palo Alto, and all that kind of stuff. And what was great was I got a really good basis in business. Here's how I'd summarize my entire business career in that way. I learned what works. Would you agree it's a good thing to have a grounding in what works? Man alive, I think it is. And then I lived in California, and I encountered New Age thinking. I encountered people who were happy but had nothing. And I thought, man, this is really super interesting. Because on one side you've got these crazy, wacky, awesome people who had nothing. And on the other side, you have these executives who don't know their children's names, have lost their wives, and who are having heart attacks at 50. Surely, there's a better way. So anyway, I had some ambitious dreams. And I'll summarize my dreams for you in a sentence my dad gave to me, and this is only still a few years ago. He said the same thing. He said, your dreams should be entertained for a couple of hours every once in a while on a lazy, rainy Sunday. And I said, thanks Dad, that's awesome. You know, he represents to me, he's great. He's actually going to be here in about 4 weeks, and I hope he doesn't meet any of you because you'll all tell me what I told him. But he's great, and he represents that very conservative business way. He represents results to me. He represents the brands you know that I work for and he worked with, who get things done every day in this world. But I'm not clear that IBM is looking out for your happiness, not in the same way. So I went ahead and I did the CEO kind of path. But I had dreams, and my dreams were statistically unlikely. A less nice way would be to say that they were impossible dreams. For example, I wanted to write a book. Who in the room wants to write a book? Yes. Usually half of every room. Let me ask that differently. Who has a book in them? Yeah, I think you do. And back in the day when I was doing that, you didn't have fantastic, I could just make one book. You had to get a publisher, you had to run 5,000 or 10,000 copies. It was a big deal. Now it's a little easier, you can do it differently. So how many manuscripts do you think are submitted to the major publishers in North America every year? 1,000. Do I hear more?
100 more.
Hundreds of thousands. Do I hear more?
Millions.
It's almost millions. Unbelievably. How many do the major publishers, I'm not talking about the boutique publishers with one person, do the major publishers pick up that wind up face front at a Borders, no, Barnes & Noble bookstore across America? A couple of thousand, right? So now your odds are something like 1 in a lot. And here I was saying to my family, but I want to do it. Yeah, well, every once in a while on a rainy Sunday. I'm like, that's not good enough. I refuse to believe that. So what I started to do around about late 90s is I started to take a little bit of time to chase my dreams. My dreams were books. I wanted to do albums. I wanted to work with children. I wanted to do stage show tours across Australia and then across the world. I wanted to have my own TV show. How cool would that be? That would be fun. Those were my dreams. And here's the wacky, weird thing. One by one, over the course of about 10 years, it took about 2 years for each one by one those things happened. Each one. And I didn't really think much about it because I was just applying myself the way I applied myself to arguably strategy and recon to sell network interface cards. I wasn't doing anything differently except I was adding this metaphysical side that was definitely not happening in the 3Com boardroom. I guarantee if you were in the 3Com boardroom and you said, everybody, let's hold hands. Let's hold hands right now. Oh yeah, it's going to be good, okay. We're going to sell the network interface card. Remember we had to have network interface cards for a computer, remember that? Alright, we're going to sell it. Right now we're on 17.1. We want to go with market share. We're going to go to 18.3. I want everyone to visualize the number 18.1. Bring it. We done? Are we good? Alright, thanks very much for coming. It turns out that they didn't work that way. In fact, no one in business worked that way. Here's the thing. What is the last word you should ever say in a meeting in a boardroom at any of those companies? Here it is. You ready? No. Don't say it. Why don't we do this with love? Get out. So I never did. But meanwhile, I was pursuing my own dream projects that were statistically unlikely. Do you think it's likely that you get your own television? Here's the most amazing thing. I'll tell you this. I remember the day I got my TV show. My TV show was on cable first, and then I traded up to the sort of the NBC, CB, Fox, Andy, that one. I did Australia's version of that. And I remember that the call came when I was consulting I used to consult for the chairman and the CEO. And I was downstairs in the warehouse because I used to hang out with the warehouse guys at lunch. I remember I was standing next to a concrete pole, a support pole, and I get the call, it's from the guy at Channel 9, his name is Brian, he was lovely. And I said, alright, so, how are we going? Do I have the show? Are you taking it? And he's like, well, it's come down to you and one other. And I went, alright, okay. Well, at least would you tell me who I'm competing with? Can you tell me who I'm in the game with? Because it's me and and my camera and a computer and crew when I need them. And he said, oh, it's you versus Warner Brothers. Now, I don't know about you, but I feel like it's statistically unlikely that I should win a battle against Warner Brothers from a warehouse in French's Forest in Sydney, in Australia, which is, you know, a long way away. And I said, right, well, what's the deal? He said, I'd love to take your show. We love your show, but the price isn't right. You can't compete with Warner Brothers. Their price is better. And I said, well, what's the difference? He said, the difference is they are going to give us their show for free as a loss leader in the Australian market. And I said something that most people would find extremely stupid. I said, what if we match their price? And he said, well, if you could match the price, I'll give you the deal. I had no money. In other words, what I want to be clear about is I was extremely clear on the passion, yes, extremely clear here, because everything starts here. I didn't have the how, but I figured the how is in many ways not my job anyway, which is a shattering way to think when you're used to working in IBM and Brigham or what have you, who pay you for the how. Very interesting. And one by one, my dreams showed up in that way, in ways that were, like, things were kind of presented. It's almost, have you heard this phrase, a kind of an old hippie phrase, go with the flow? Have you ever been in the flow? Yeah? Have you had crazy cool things happen to you, or you meet someone, you could like run over them, it doesn't matter how you meet them. You meet someone who connects with someone and something happens, and when it happens, it's like effortless. I think I'm raining on you, I'm sorry. It's effortless. Have you ever been in the flow and then subsequently fallen out? Is that crushing? What happened? So what was interesting was, as I did all this stuff, career, blah, 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 dream cool things, people started asking me, they said, is there something that you do? Is there a way? Is there a process? Is there a thing? And I went, oh yeah, come over, I'll show you. And I just would have people come over, and in half an hour a day I'd show them what they did, and they'd go off, and things would change for them. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I don't really think about it until sometime later, so many people were asking me about it. I had to just blow them all off. I mean, I was doing a TV show, I was in 26 cities, I missed my son's first steps because I was goofing around, I believe, swimming with a dolphin or something. And it was lovely, but it wasn't his first steps. And so I decided that I would stop all of that, and a little window emerged, and people had been asking me, would you write out this system, which I did. And that system became the book, and the book is the one that's over there now. And the system is what I want to share with you today.